This is Generation Stadia, giving you that daily dose of everything and anything Stadia related, and today we got some more Stadia news to cover. Today we'll be discussing Phil Harrison's recent words on 4K 60fps streaming, some Stadia controller prototypes, but before that, let's focus on this PR blunder. PC Games End recently reported on an Edge magazine entry about Google Stadia. In said entry, VP of Engineering Maj Bakar had something to say about the future of Google Stadia as a platform. Bakar went on to say, "Ultimately, we think in a year or two we'll have games that are running faster and feel more responsive in the cloud than they do locally, regardless of how powerful the local machine is." Now, if you're wondering how they plan on doing this, well, they refer to it as negative latency. While the name sounds cool, it basically means that the game's gonna predict what you're about to press before you press it. Now, this led to a lot of concerns and doubts on whether or not this is all possible, but let's just focus on why this was a mistake to say. Well, first off, we don't have any examples of what this looks like or how well it'll even work. In fact, a lot of people have doubts of this even being possible for many reasons. Secondly, I don't think it's a great idea to tell gamers who cherish playing games that the game will end up playing itself, even if it's just a slight bit. And lastly, I'm just afraid that Google's starting to talk a lot about the future but not have anything to show for it just yet. Now, don't get me wrong, I think if any company is capable of knowing what you're gonna do before you do it, it would be Google. But judging what everyone's reaction to this was outside of the Stadia subreddit, everyone's taking it as a joke. Personally speaking, I don't think Google's ever been the best company when it comes to doing PR, and it's really starting to show with stuff like this. If you're gonna talk about something so advanced as this, be prepared to show it. Because if not, all you're gonna get is a lot of hate online, and it was even trending on Twitter for a bit, and once again, it was pure hate. Now, my personal opinion on this is that I think it's cool and I would love to see it work out, and I get why they're building toward it. I mean, if they can reduce latency even further than most local hardware, that would be a huge breakthrough for game streaming but also cloud computing. Not to mention, Google does a fantastic job when it comes to collecting data on its users, and if they have us playing these games for 1 or 2 years, I'm sure they can start to collect enough data to figure out how we play. With that said, I do think it's a very confusing concept for most to think about. Exactly how is the game gonna know what I'm about to do before I do it? Not to mention, at what point is a game playing itself more than I'm playing it, and how would that affect games that are online? Either way, I find it a very interesting idea, and I'm really curious to hear your opinions on it, so be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Now, the next bit of news is actually pretty interesting to see and read up on. It's actually how they came to design the Stadia controller. In an article written by PopSci, they take an in-depth look at how they came to design Stadia's controller, and I have to say it's a pretty fascinating process. All the images you're seeing on the screen right now are prototypes to what ended up becoming the final model, and it gives a very interesting step-by-step look on how hardware like this gets designed from the ground up. For example, when it comes to analog sticks, they laid out a grid pattern and let players figure out where it felt best for the placement. And I wanted to include this because some of you I know will find information like this pretty interesting to look into. So if you want to see it all, be sure to check in the description below for the link to the article. Now, the last bit of confirmed news that I wanted to cover in today's video is really important. We finally got some official clarification from Phil Harrison nonetheless on how games will run on Stadia with the whole 4K 60fps statement. When asked on Twitter whether every single game will run at 4K 60fps, Phil Harrison responded with the following. "Yes, all games at launch support 4K. We designed Stadia to enable 4K 60 with appropriate TV and bandwidth. We want all games to play 4K 60, but sometimes for artistic reasons, a game is 4K 30, so Stadia always streams at 4K 60 via 2x encode." Now, I need to clarify this because I've seen quite a bit of confusion on what this means. This means that not every single game is going to be running at 4K 60 frames per second natively. What this means is that the stream will be delivered to us at 4K 60, but the game will still play with 30 FPS in mind. Now, if you're starting to wonder why they would stream to us at 4K 60fps if we're going to be playing a game that only runs 4K 30, well, according to Digital Foundry, they found out that streaming at 60fps actually reserves the image quality of the stream. So it makes sense for them to be streaming at 60fps even if the game is 30fps natively. But ultimately, what does that mean for us, the players? Basically, by the wording of the tweet, not every launch title is going to be playing at 60 frames per second, and that is a bit of a bummer. That really leaves me curious to find out which games actually do and which don't. Now, with everything here stated, I really do hope developers start targeting 60 frames per second, because even though they say it's for artistic reasons, if I'm being honest, I've never played a game that felt better at 30 FPS when I could play it and run it at 60 FPS. Now that pretty much wraps up all of today's news. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button as it really does help the channel out. And if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. Now today's end of video message is going to be a question about the whole 4K 30 FPS thing. I am very curious to find out how you feel about this recent announcement, because some people did assume that every single game was going to be running 4K 60 natively. I am very curious to find out which games do and which games don't, and I'll definitely be bringing that fact up during my Stadia game reviews. It does leave me a little worried that Red Dead Redemption 2 may not run natively at 4K 60 frames per second, but as of right now we have no confirmation on what games will and what games won't, so my fingers are crossed and hoping for the best. Anyways, this has been Generation Stadia, giving you that daily dose of everything and anything Stadia related. The Gen S community is officially 1,000 strong and growing by the day, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds. Peace.